Very good evening, everyone. Welcome into your box seat, brought to you in association with Sweet Lou, standing at Woodlands, a very special box seat tonight. Of course, the idea of Michael Guerin heading out to our industry participants and talking to them about things going on in the game. And rather than us tell you every week what our opinions are, we seek to get their opinions in their words. Of course, we lined up about half a dozen, actually 7 in total. We kick things off with Ken Spicer, who is Harness Racing New Zealand's chairman. Of course, he and his wife Anne-Marie operate the Rosendale Farm, who's been a big contributor to harness racing at yearling sales time. Of course, they bred Sheriff, the recent winner of the Diamond Creek Farm New Zealand Derby, and they part own a horse called Maverick, who won the Invercargill Cup. So why not go to the top, the chairman, and get his thoughts around that. We also catch up with Jack Harrington, a young trainer doing good things. He's trained over 20 winners in a short training career of only about 3 seasons, and he's already had a Group 1 winner, of course, Renesmee, winning the Breeders' Crown in Melbourne last August. And of course, one at Alexandra Park last Friday night goes round over the next couple of weeks at group level. He's a forward thinker. He's trying to put together some syndicates, so getting his thoughts around some of our key issues will also be well sought after. Nathan Williamson, we head south, a man who's driven over 700 winners and trained over 200 winners. We wanted a voice from the south, so we caught up with Nathan to boot. Mark Jones often has theories around the industry. Sometimes he doesn't channel them in the right direction. We have got him part of our program tonight to get his thoughts around some of these key areas. We also caught up with Stephen Reid, a man who's trained over 1,000 winners, of course developed such types as Bailey's Dream, Monkey King, Gold Ace, who went on to win a Group 1 free-for-all at Addington Raceway and of course stands at stud now, and he's the current trainer of Star Galleria, one of the favourites for the Taylor Mile Messenger Jules treble, which is to come up over the next 5 or 6 weeks. Always has an opinion, a real thinker in the game, so getting Stephen Reid's thoughts will be fantastic too. We catch up with Ken Brecken. He himself part-owned a millionaire champion trotter I Can Do's It, along with his wife Karen. They developed Brecken Farms, very much world-renowned these days, prolific breeder of quality yearlings, and a guy with a great brain, business brain, so it'll be terrific to get his thoughts too. And we also catch up with Ross Johnson, the man who owned and operated IRT. He sold that business recently. He's on the board of the Auckland Trotting Club. Cowgirls and Indians, a winner of the Harness Jewels, amongst many, many winners. Ross and his partner Janine Cole have raced together, and he's setting up an adjustment farm, a multi-million-dollar setup just out of Auckland to adjust horses. And of course, we really look forward to his insight into some of these questions as well. We kicked things off by asking our participants how the current handicapping system is operating, and are they happy with it?
I think it's a bit of a catch-22 really, because the good horses are getting penalised a lot more severely, and the lesser horses are getting a bit of a break. Like you get the likes of 40 start horses that have won 3 races and they can win another race and go race against maidens. So look, I think it's they're looking after the lesser horses more than the better horses, but then again there are more lesser horses than better horses. So look, I think it is working, and I think trainers have just got to use it to their advantage and place their horses.
I think if you're one of the 80% of the horse population that are rated 60 or below, you're being relatively well looked after with the system. But there's clearly a breakdown for that top 20%. They're moving up the system too quickly and becoming unviable to race in New Zealand. Now there are moves afoot within the handicapping committee to address that, and I'd like to just hold back on answering that question until these moves are released and trialled.
At this stage, Greg, I would say a success. It's not the finished article, we know that, but in terms of some of our KPIs, we're up. We're getting more horses to start. We're getting less $1.30 favourites, and we're getting bigger field sizes. So from that point of view, it's working. We know it's not perfect. It's probably working at the bottom end, where the bulk of the horses are, but as you know, with a good horse going through, they're probably getting up a wee bit quick, and it's sort of complicated there because as they get up, the pool numbers drop away. So there's probably some work to do at that top end. In saying that, we've got a handicapping meeting in a couple of weeks whereby the panel that does that, and that involves people like Ken Barron, they will sit down and fine-tune it again. So it's not a finished process, but I think it's working well.
I think it should be retained. I want to say that it's not working, but it is a little bit of a double-edged sword, because I feel that with the pool of horses that we're dealing with, especially in the North Island, I don't think any handicapping system is going to work at the moment. We need to have a system where they can slide up and down, and they need to slide up and down at quite a reasonable rate. I feel that the powers that be, they need to keep working on it and tweaking it, and if they do that, then I think there's a chance that it could turn things around. At the moment, I think it's very much against the good young horse. Everyone in the industry is trying to strive to get a good young horse, but under the current system at the moment, they're persecuting that horse. It's going through the grades far too quick. So all in all, I want to say it's not working, but I'm optimistic that with a bit of tweaking and a bit more work and allowing those horses to slide down quicker, I think it can work.
Probably a bit of both, Greg. I can see positives to it, but I think the negatives outweigh the positives for me, so I'd prefer to go back to the old one.
It depends what type of horse you've got. If you've got a bad horse, it's probably a success. If you've got a good horse, it's a failure. It's probably supporting mediocrity, which I'm not really a fan of. We've all got bad horses, but we need to really look after our good horses. So it's a 50-50 call, but for the better horses, it's definitely a failure.
And should the current system be retained?
I think we need to modify it. I'd like to go back to the old system, the class system, which was easy to follow, easy for trainers, easy for owners and easy for punters, and come back to a point system within the grades, so the best horses in the grade race each other. And I think more so not a handicapping is our problem, I think it's the programming, and we really need to get the programming right, and Southland Module's been forward on that, and that's one thing we need to get right.
Look, I think it's working probably better in the South Island, and again, it's the old adage, they've just got so many more horses down there. So, you know, if there's say 55s to 60, well, there's a bigger pool of horses. Where what happens in the North Island, from what I understand, there just isn't that horse number. So you'll get a 55, and in the end, to make up a field, you'll be racing with a 60 or a 62, or you'll get fillies that are thrown in with the colts because there's not enough fillies to make up a field. So again, they go back to the current structure, and it just doesn't work. So again, the shortage of horses in the north, I think down south probably working a lot better.
Should we introduce Lasix to New Zealand harness racing?
I'm for it, definitely. Like, you get the likes of, you know, Mosdale, Connor, Chris and me, a bit of a legend. They go over there, grow another leg, and, you know, we don't know what's exactly going on, but, you know, if they got Lasix over there, and you think if they were on it here, you know, our open class ranks should be a lot better, and you get the likes of, say, last year's New Zealand Cup, whereas there was a bit of disrepute about it and how sort of a weaker field it was. If we were on the Lasix, and the field would be a lot stronger, our open class ranks would be a lot stronger. And then again, if everyone can use Lasix, we're on an even playing field and no one's got anything to whinge about.
Lasix is a very controversial subject. America is the only recognised racing nation that uses it on race day, albeit with a detention barn. There's been numerous studies done, and there's some compelling answers or compelling arguments to its ban or its use. I think it's really clear that Lasix helps a horse that's bled, 100%. But there have been studies done where it's shown that Lasix can be performance enhancing for a horse that hasn't bled. So the question is, does it become an uneven playing field unless all the horses are on Lasix? Clearly, the other countries or other racing nations believe that it isn't, and hence the ban on Lasix. However, I think we'd need to do some more research, and we would need to find out, we would need to discuss how, why and when and under what conditions we would use it before we could make an educated decision on it.
Yeah, that's been asked a number of times over the last few years. The advice that we get is no. You can use it in work, and I think it has a withholding period of 3 to 4 days. So the advice we're getting is no. Based on the animal welfare issues, the horses dehydrate, they lose weight, And the other thing is that there is some research to suggest that maybe it can mask other substances. So at this stage, I would say no, would be my answer to that.
I think without a doubt Lasix should be introduced. I feel that the authority, or Harness Racing New Zealand, I think that they're a little bit closed-minded when it comes to the drug rules. If a person is using a substance to enhance a horse's performance, I think they should get life. But if you're using a substance or a drug that is helping that horse to perform to the best of its ability, I think that's fine. And over the years, you imagine the number of horses that would be retained in New Zealand to race had we been allowing Lasix. Just quickly, another thing on that is anti-inflammatories. A horse called Victor Supreme ran second in the Inter-Dominion many years ago, and she returned a positive to Voltaren. That, as far as I know, that's an anti-inflammatory, and surely an anti-inflammatory like Voltaren is simply allowing Victor Supreme to run to her best of her ability. They're not trying to make her run better than she's capable of running, they're just trying to make her run to the best of her ability. So the answer to the question about Lasix is, yeah, Lasix should be definitely used in New Zealand.
No, I don't think so, Greg. I think it offers us to sell to America and perhaps give those older horses a life after racing over there. So, no, I don't think so.
Definitely, I think we need to really have a good look at bringing this into New Zealand, and we're losing far too many horses to America, and with breeding numbers down we can't afford to lose horses, and we're losing our best horses. So we've got to remember we're breeding all American blood, and they're all racing on Lasix, and bleeding's hereditary too. So it's something we have to address here in racing in New Zealand, and I'd rather see Harness Racing be proactive for a change and actually lead the way, and definitely look at bringing Lasix in, and we need the good horses racing here for a longer period of time.
Yeah, well, look, I probably think so. I've had, look, I go right back to the very first horse that I ever owned, Maghera, and of course she was an exceptional two-year-old of the year, and brings back fond memories, but in actual fact she bled, and that was really the end of her career. Tony Hurley always said to me, had the horse been able to race with Lasix, it could have been anything. Had she again gone to America and again raced with Lasix, she could have been a very special horse. So again, with a shortage of horses in New Zealand, we lose horses obviously because of it, and horses like Chris and me were probably one that comes to mind. We lose them because they can't race with Lasix.
The All-Stars domination, a good or a bad thing for the industry?
Yeah, that's another catch-22 as well, I think, because they do dominate and it is what it is, but they also bring in a lot of interest and a lot of revenue, and it is like selling our brand to overseas investors, and they see these good horses going around, and they might start looking at All-Stars and then look elsewhere, so they do advertise for us. But then again, it is, coming from a trainer's point of view, it is a bit demeaning, going out there and running behind 3 or 4 of theirs. But again, it comes down to placement of the horses, and if you think you can take them on, take them on.
Hey, Mark and Natalie are people that the industries and other trainers should aspire to. I think their professionalism, their trading model is unequalled. However, I got to say, no disrespect to them, I was really rapt to see Nigel win the Derby the other day. Just the fact that it was spread around.
Without sort of aiming at them, I think the domination is what it is. I would say that there are pluses and minuses. On the positive side, I suppose it's they have sort of dragged the bar up and they've raised it, which has forced the other people to raise their game. On the negative side, from a governance point of view, I suppose we like to see the money spread, and in this case I suppose there's a lot more money going into one particular sector. So there's pluses and minuses, but yeah, that's a hard one to answer.
The All-Stars domination, they are very clinical and they set a high standard, so I can only see that that's a good thing for the industry.
What's your attitude to racing against them though?
I don't have any attitude to racing against them. I assess every race on what are the best horses in the field, It just so happens to be that in the last probably couple of years their horses have been the best, but I try to not focus on other people's horses. I try to only focus on my own, so I don't have a problem racing them.
I think domination is a bad thing, but you've got to take your head off to them. They're the country's leading stable, so yeah, I mean, it's a good and bad thing. I think, yeah, it's hard racing them, but yeah, it's probably a positive for the sport.
What's your attitude towards it? Does it encourage you to get better?
Yeah, it does. Definitely encourages you to push yourself to a new level, and I think that's got to be positive. So yeah, we can't hide. We've just got to you know, attack.
As a trainer, it's probably a bad thing trying to beat them, but I don't think it's a bad thing for the industry. Like, you can't knock success, and you know, as a trainer, we've just got to lift our game to get to their level, and their professionalism is second to none, and you know, their results show that. So yeah, I think as a industry we've got to get together and stop moaning about it and accept it and try to beat them. And you know, it showed the last couple of weeks they are beatable, and everybody's beatable. So as Mick says, you know, he refers to the All Blacks, so they're the best rugby team in the world, and other teams are up to their standards. So that's one thing we've got to do. And you know, you get sick of hearing the negativity in harness racing, and that's one thing we need to get rid of.
So therefore, your attitude to racing against them is?
Yeah, I try to dodge them if I can, but my attitude is I just buy better stock, target the better races, and yeah, they've got a great module. They target the best stakes. They don't turn up on a Sunday and beat the average people up, and you know, you've got to give them credit for that. So I've definitely changed my business model, and you know, you talk to Mark and he's always happy to help in any way. So my thing is I've upped my game and upped my training and changed it and just brought better stock. And what they got to realise is the horses purred and said we can bite the sales as well. So you know, we have every opportunity as they do.
Look, I think as an industry we should be embracing champions. I mean, if we're going to carry on with this game and become a professional identity, you know, against our counterparts, the thoroughbreds, we need people like Mark Purdon. Sadly, the days of an amateur of sport are gone. You're seeing far more or bigger studs getting involved, commercial breeders. We just have to raise the bar, and you know, I don't think Mark Purdon in actual fact gets the accolades he should. I think the sporting fraternity of New Zealand should be recognising him. So it's all about, as far as I'm concerned, Mark Purdon continues to raise the bar, and I mean that's things, whether it be sulkies, food nutrition, so on and so forth. So rather than moan about it, I think these younger trainers should aspire to it, get on the bus, and if they don't, well, get out of the game.
Hey, I remember the Auckland rugby team back in the early 80s under John Hart. They seemed unbeatable. Canterbury though came out mid 80s, they beat them and started another dynasty. Mark and Natalie won't be at the top of the game forever.
You're with the box seat. It's our special In Their Words, and of course we're with Sweet Lou, who stands at Woodland Stud. We continue our look at some of the contemporary issues in harness racing, and does the club voting system, the way it currently is and operates, does it restrict our ability to make change quickly?
Well, first off, I don't necessarily think that's right. The voting system really only comes into play to appoint the board members and around the Constitution. So it doesn't impact on the board's ability or HRNZ's ability to have an effective governance day-to-day running of the industry. So that's not quite true, but in saying that, we need to look at the governance. We are at the moment, and we'll be taking a couple of different models back to the AGM in September. Yeah. But in terms of impacting on the day-to-day running and the governance, it doesn't play a major part, no.
Hey, the Harness Racing New Zealand board can make fairly quick decisions on racing and on the business. The problem with the club voting system is only if we want to make changes to the Constitution. So it doesn't have a great impact.
Yeah, I'm not really for it, to be honest. Like, you get those clubs that, you know, they have 1 or 2 meetings a year and they've got an equal vote to a club that has between 20 and 30 meetings a year, it's probably not fair in a way. Like, I'm probably more for a point of view where you have a board or a committee with a few delegates from each region, and it's up to that committee to vote amongst themselves and just go from there.
Oh, we definitely need to change. Like, the whole constitution of harness racing needs to change. I think we're, in the 2000s and we're still living in the arc. And the club system voting, we've probably got clubs voting on things they don't even know about. So I think we need a board of 3 people from each, or 1 from each area in New Zealand and 2 independents. And we need change made immediately if we want change. And if it doesn't work, we can go back. So I think the constitution of harness racing definitely needs to change.
Well, a touchy subject, but I do find it's quite strange. Some of these smaller clubs, I mean, they all need to have their say, but most definitely I think the bigger clubs, the Addingtons and Auckland, need to have a bigger say in it. And I think you only have to look at the size of the investment. We all know what Auckland's doing at the moment with this huge development. Surely to goodness there should be some more voting power.
Harness duels, should it remain away from the metropolitan tracks?
I think so, definitely. I think, if you brought the duels to Addington or Alexandra Park, the whole atmosphere would, get lost in the concrete jungle, so to speak. It would just, I think it's not like, the cup week and that, when you can get thousands of people there and it's a bit of a hustle and bustle. It's June, middle of winter, it's a bit colder. I think if you go out to these smaller tracks and that smaller communities, it does have a better feel to it, and it is a great environment. So I'm happy with where the duels are at the moment, especially say like Ashburton and Cambridge, where the mile racing, it is suited there better. If we brought it to say the likes of Addington, you couldn't do the mile racing because the start's on the bend, so you'd have to change the whole dynamic of it, and I just don't think it would work.
The duels need to be where we can get at the best track, where we can get the best crowds, the best facilities for horses, the best spectators, and of course the best for turnover. If that's a provincial track, then so be it. But there's a lot riding on, I think, Cambridge this year on the what they produce, and I believe by all accounts they've gone really over out there to make it a success.
Well, obviously, as we know, the board's going to make a decision in a couple of weeks. It's turned into a hot potato. And I don't think whichever way we choose to go, it won't be the right one. There are fors and against for both venues. Obviously, if we get a wet day, then obviously this place here at the Met would be the obvious answer. In saying that, I sort of feel that a big event at a small place has some appeal. But I can't really say more than that until we actually see all the facts and figures in front of us. And at the end of the day, the board will make the right call, I'm sure.
No, I think they should probably go to the main tracks. The only reason I say that is because I have attended, and I know Ashburton aren't going to be happy with this, but I have attended a few duels at Ashburton. I think as a spectacle, it's not good having the track so far away. So I would like to see maybe the duels come to somewhere like, say, Auckland or Addington. However, I think this talk of mile racing does my head in. Why are the duels miles? Like, everyone knows that if you race at Auckland or even Cambridge, because that's where they are at the moment, the mile is a joke of a start. Why not have it 1,700 metres at Cambridge? Because the powers that be say, oh, we want to have mile racing, but our drivers don't drive to run massive times. I must admit, it's really exciting when Smoking Up smashed the record at Menangle that night and went 48. How good was it? But how often in our duels races do the drivers drive to run those supersonic times? So if they're not going to drive to do the mile racing and break the fast times, why not have it at 1,700 or have it at 1950? And I'm reluctant to say it because I know what it means to Cambridge and Ashburton to have them, but from my point of view, I probably would like to see Addington and Alexandra Park maybe get a turn at it.
yes, I love the duels the way they are. I think Ashburton and Cambridge, I wouldn't mind if they shared it round some more provincial tracks, but definitely stay away from the main centres.
I'm not really worried where it goes. I'd like to see a system where every club in New Zealand's able to put up a bid for it and the best hosting bid wins, whether it's Wyndham, Gore, Cambridge, Manawatu, just the best system for the racing, and who can put the best opportunities on the table and money wise. And if the country clubs can't, well, it can go to Addington and Auckland, and I can see why the corporates would like it at Addington and Auckland. And I think the whole duels thing need an overhaul. It's getting a bit stale, and change is definitely needed. But at the end of the day, if we have 9 duels races, wherever it's run, we'll have 9 different winners.
Well, look, it's been a discussion I've had with a number of people. In a perfect world, you'd like to be propping up the smaller clubs, but again, I go back to professionalism, I go back to crowd participation, I go back probably more importantly to sponsorship. Whether we like it or not, if we're going to grow the sport, we need to be at the 2 major clubs. And again, support the clubs, smaller clubs in a different manner. But if we're going to attract major sponsorship, get television across both New Zealand and Australia, it needs to be at the big clubs.
Standing start process, have we got it right?
I think we do. I really think we've got the standing start process right. I think the issue is repeat offenders. You get those same horses that are playing up at the start, rearing up, won't square up to the tapes, galloping away and just causing trouble. I think the process is right, but I do think we need to be more harsh on the repeat offenders. Give them a warning if they do it again, and they can go back to the trials, and they're not allowed back in the stand until they satisfy the stops at the trials. And then I think if we do that, if we scrutinise the repeat offenders better, there'll be no issues with the standing starts, because I think you touched on it a couple of weeks ago. Sky Racing in Australia, if we're running behind on time, they'll just cut us straight away and you won't see it. So that's more revenue and income that we're actually losing. So I think just scrutinise some more repeat offenders.
Do you have a preferred method, walk up, or do you want them standing?
I don't have a preferred method, but I think it needs to be the same method every time. If everyone's on an even playing field and you know what's going to happen, then that's fine. If you know it's going to be a stand, you've got to stand there for 2-3 seconds, whatever, then that's fine. If you know you can go up and walk in, that's fine too. As long as everyone knows what's happening and it's consistent all the way through, I don't have an issue.
We need to get all the starters in the country on the same page. So I think we need a working group of starters and leading drivers to come up with the best method to use and use it consistently right through the New Zealand. We have to be everyone on the same page. Myself, I'd prefer where the horses walk around, they stop, and then they walk up to the tape and try and get an even start like that. Of course, it creates cramped issues if you've got a 10-metre mark, but there's no reason why, and I think they do it at Alexander Park sometimes, where they'll put cones out on the inside and outside of the track, so it just doesn't have it all cramped. So those 10-metre horses can still walk around, they can go into over where the tape would be, and then they could get back and walk up and all go together.
We need consistency up and down the country, and that's the biggest bugbear, I think. Whether it's in Southland or whether it's in Auckland, the standing starts should be the same. We haven't quite got that yet, and we need to address that. In saying that, I think we do need standing starts, but the push is more to be going more to the mobiles, and I think you'll see going forward that there'll be less standing starts. But I can't see them going, but they will get less and less.
I'm someone that is not really a fan of standing starts. Over the last probably 10 years, I've actually verged on probably a bit of a supporter of doing away with stands. So I don't really have a opinion about the process. One thing I would say though, from what I've seen, I think it needs to either be one or the other. They need to either stand or they need to be walking in. It's one or the other. Just quickly, one little theory I do have is maybe a light system where a light comes on at 3 minutes, a light comes on at a minute, so on and so forth, down to start time, and at start time a green light comes on, and at that time they release the tapes. Because what I see time and time again, and I'm sure the punters get angry at this, is that the horses that cause the issue at the start they're invariably the ones that the starter keeps an eye on, and then they hinder the ones that have been standing well.
I think there's been so many changes, I don't really know what the system is. So I prefer the stand back and walk forward in a way, and I think certain starters do that pretty well. So if that was the method, I'd like that. But there are a few different methods wherever you go.
No, I think it's a wee way from getting right, but I'm kind of sick of the starters getting the blame for everything. I don't think it's the starters' fault. I'd put it back to the horsemen, and the drivers are probably the reasons the starts are so bad. Half the horses have probably never been passed from a stand, and I think we need to get horses trolled from a stand to race day. The punters are getting let down as the owners. So the annoying thing for everybody is the ones that play up get the best starts normally, and personally I don't think it's the starters' fault. I think it's the horses and drivers, and until the horsemen get their house in order, you can't blame the starters. So definitely a lot of work needs to be done, but I think the horsemen need to pick their game up.
Do you have a preferred method, being stop them and they really do stand, or the moving start?
Just a consistent one all through New Zealand really, but I think we still like to stand and just a wee bit back from the tape, and just get a wee bit of warning and a step forward, and then everyone has their chance to get away. So it's a pretty simple method, and if everyone follows it, we should get it right pretty quick.
Well, breeding the old wobblers, again, it becomes a tricky situation. Look for a punter, and I do like the odd wager or two. I think standing starts are tough. Are they going to bring new punters into the game? Probably not. They don't like standing starts. But again, very hard trying to get a perfect way of handicapping the likes of trotters and open class paces. I mean, what's fair and how can we do it better? I think where they've tried by having a mobile and putting the best horses on the outside, look, I think sometimes the gap is too great, and I mean, you can handicap some of these great horses on some pretty tough draws, but they still seem to win. So it is hard. I don't know how you get around it, particularly with the trotters.
So some really interesting thoughts so far. After the break, we have a look at the breeding numbers and what could we possibly do to alleviate the continued erosion of the number of horses being bred. And we also put it to our participants, if there was one thing they could change in our sport, what would that be? Horse numbers, how far are we away from a severe shortage?
South Island I don't think too much, because we've always got pretty big fields and there's a lot of race meetings and we seem to be filling them up. North Island, they do have severe shortages some weeks they do alright. So I think they need to do more breeding initiatives. They do it a few places down here, like you win a race, you get a free service, things like that. I think more things like that will get the numbers up over the years, and that's the way to go, I think.
The harness industry at the moment, look, we're at a really low ebb. We've got record low breeding numbers, which means smaller fields, lesser turnover, lesser income, could lead to lesser stakes. And this breeding numbers is not a quick fix. We need a 5 to 10 year plan in place to try and improve the number of mares bred or get more mares bred. Well, whether that's through tax, whether it's through programming better fillies and mares races to get these studs to retain these mares, whether it's we ramp up the export fees on age mares leaving the country. It's got to be done, because we need to get these better numbers. The other problem we've got is in the Auckland area. High costs to run a mare. Also the high cost of land. So you're finding now in Auckland that the major studs are becoming the major broodmare owners. So they breed the mares, they sell weanlings, they sell yearlings. It's not a bad thing, but it makes it harder on the smaller breeder, because they're paying retail for their service fee, they're not doing the bulk numbers, so the costs are higher, so they're finding it becoming unviable for them to do that. The other thing we have is foreign-owned stallions. Is it great for the New Zealand industry for funds to be going offshore and not being accounted for in New Zealand? Not every stud does it. Not every stud has it. A lot of the studs, the Alabars and the Neville Rs and the Woodlands, like to take a piece of their own horse, but there are still horses coming down to the southern hemisphere where all the funds are going offshore. It is not good for our industry.
That's hard to know really, but we wouldn't want to get any less than where we are, and we've said as a board that this figure is the figure that we don't want to go down past. In saying that, we are getting more horses to race on the positive side, and we're getting a bigger percentage of the foal crop to race with the improving and the breeding. But yeah, I don't know how we improve that. It's a really hard one. There's no breeding incentives around the world that are working, apart from the one in France, whereby it's heavily supported by the government. We've got a few breeding schemes on the table that we've considered, but at this stage we haven't put them into place, mainly because you actually have to fund them, and to fund them right now we need to take it off something else, so which would not be the best of calls to make. So yeah, I think we wouldn't want to go any less, and hopefully with the rise in stakes we can have that filtering back to the breeding barn, and people might just see that there is a future.
Well, in the North Island we're really very, very close to a severe shortage, with only 2,000 odd mares being bred. Most of them I think are in the South Island. I struggle to see how harness racing is going to go ahead without having more horses bred. Look at it like this: there's a shortage of horses, so anything that breeders or owners are going to breed now, surely the value of them, especially if they go good, is going to have to go up. So it's a good thing to maybe breed horses.
I think breeding numbers down, and as we mentioned before, it's very hard to compete with a few of the top stables, so that makes it difficult for owners to come into the game. So I think, yeah, it won't be long.
What about any ideas to encourage the breeders out there to breed their mare?
More stake money in lower grade races, I think, is the key to that, and yeah, I mean maybe a reduction in stud prices.
I think we're already there. The numbers of breeding down are massively down, and we're getting emails weekly now with brood mares for sale because breeders are getting out. So it's a major problem, and it's only going downwards. So it's not very promising for harness racing.
What, if any, ideas do you have to encourage broodmare owners to breed?
I think it comes back to Harness Race New Zealand and even Pines. Like, we buy from Australia a lot, and when we win a race, their first race at 2, 3 and 4, they get a $7,000 bonus, and half that goes back to the breeders. Vic breeds $9,000, and the breeder gets money out of every win. So we really need to look at incentives for breeders, because they're getting nothing out of it, and if they're getting their ass kicked at the sales, they're not getting any money when the horse wins a race. So even coming back to Pines, like in Australia, probably what I refer to again is we get a $3,000 credit every time a horse we buy at the sales wins a race, so it entices our owners to go back to the sales. So I think it comes back to the governing body that we need to get money back to the breeders, and it's a bonus system that we definitely need for owners and breeders, and if they take a leaf out of the Australian book, I'm sure it'll go a long way to getting the numbers back.
Look, I think there's a number of issues. We definitely have a massive shortage, and again in the North Island, some of these fields, we're screaming for horses. People don't like punting on 2-horse dividends. It's just not the way, so we need full fields to again attract people to punt. Look, there's a massive exodus of horses to both Australia, and I see America again. Look, this in part's probably again being brought about by a different handicapping system in Australia, or a broader handicapping system. Look, the Purdon factor winning a lot of races. I hear that a lot of the smaller trainers keep their horses away from the Purdons, even at trials and workouts, for somebody trying to keep value in their horses by not getting beaten at trials. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I'm not sure, but I find it frustrating. I've got a lot of young 2-year-old horses. The number of times that you see fields, Auckland puts on trotters races for 2-year-olds. We end up having a non-tote race because there's only 2 or 3 horses that are nominated. It's not good for the game. It's not good for people, new people that are participating in the game, and wanting a bang for the buck, a quick return. So I think there's issues where maybe sometimes trainers aren't putting the horses up. They might in fact be there, but we're not seeing them.
If there was one thing you could change in the sport, what would that be?
I think that the winners need to be, get more reward. So, instead of getting, I think 53% of the winning stake, bump it up to 60% and cut the horses that run out the back. They get less, sort of thing. I personally think if you're running out the back, why get anything at all, really, to be fair. So if you're winning a race, you need to be rewarded for it and earn a decent amount and give the owners a bit more money. And if you give them more money, they're going to put more money into the industry.
If I could wave a magic wand, I'd like to see 2,000 more horses generated into the industry, which would have a great roll-on effect all the way through the game.
Well, I've often wondered what the landscape would look like if, coming from a breeding point of view, and just following on from the last question, back in the day when the court ruled that the governing body could not restrict the number of mares, so that was turned over, and I often wondered if you could turn that round and we had that in place now, what the landscape would look like. I think we would have a far more diverse gene pool, and we would have less dominance by 2 or 3 sires, and you'd have to think that would have been a good thing, but hindsight's a great thing, and at that time it was seen to be the right move by those that took it to court, but you'd have to think now that it's probably caused us a few problems.
I've probably got a few things, but I don't, without going too in depth about what I would improve, one thing I would like to try or see done, especially in the North Island, is I would like to see the race meetings start later and have shorter intervals between races. I know that the TAB, and with the restrictions on other meetings coming in, that makes it hard, but I'd like to see the meetings condensed and make them more quick fire.
Just higher stakes right across the board. Very hard to pay wages out and get little return at the end of the day. Probably
100 things, but probably like to see the trotting stakes getting up equal to the pacing stakes. We've got more trotters and they're going to hold the industry in good stead for the future. I'd like to see Addington race at least twice a week with the horse numbers in Canterbury, and I'd probably like to see money taken away from the juvenile racing and put into older horse racing, and that'll give our horses longevity and the better horses to race for better money, because we need the good horses on the track more often.
Look, I see the industry, I see too many participants that all have their own agendas, and whether it be, look, I'm involved, you look at the Breeding Association, there's North Island Breeders, there's Canterbury Breeding Association, Southland Breeding Association, the New Zealand Breeders Association. So that goes right through the industry, tons of clubs all doing their own thing. So what I'd like to see is somehow someone bringing this whole industry together.
Well, that was in their words. So what did you think of that? I found some of those answers quite intriguing, and we'll just see if, as a result of them, we do see some change in the future. If you want to give us your opinion on it, send us an email, theboxseat@tab.co.nz. We can have a chat about it on next week's show. Friday night, Alexandra Park, first of 2 nights of the Autumn Carnival, featuring 3 Group 1s and a Group 2. When we return, we'll have a look at the markets and preview those major races.
Rain through the centre, Winter Let's Hustle, Late Just Dance with Apocalypse, but Sarah O'Reilly's won the last. Highland Rain won it from Let's Hustle and either Just Dance and Apocalypse, then Leighton's Lass back in black.
Well, first of all, Sarah, congratulations. I know you wanted this to happen a lot earlier than it did, but that monkey off your back now must feel pretty good.
Yeah, no, it was really good and it felt great crossing the line.
Driving one, of course, for Bruce Negus, who's your current employer. Highland Rain we talk about. She knew her way to the winner's circle. She'd done it a few times earlier on, but she got a beautiful run, didn't she?
Yeah, it was. She helps a lot having a horse that knows what they're doing. She's had 10 winners, and yeah, 3 back the fence wasn't a bad place to be on Monchkrara.
When you popped to the middle of the track, she showed some really good speed. Tell me about the elation going over the line. Was it really exciting, or was it more relief?
It was exciting when I hit the gap, and crossing the line it was more exciting and relief.
Yeah, but a combination of both. Now, that's number one. You wanted to get that win out of the way. What about the future? What are you most looking forward to?
Just keep learning and driving more winners, and hopefully one day driving one for each of my uncles and my dad.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Tell me about your dad, and was he encouraging at an early age? How early was your first drive, and did you sort of want to do it more than he wanted you to do it?
Well, don't really remember my first drives or anything because I was so young. There's pictures of me on my dad's lap in the lounge, but I wanted to do it more than Dad wanted me to do it, and I just weaved my way in there.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Jared and your mum Jane are absolutely proud of you getting win number one. Hopefully it's one of many for you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So heartiest congratulations to Sarah O'Reilly. What about what's ahead for you this week in your harness racing world? And we kick things off with Forbury Park on Thursday night. 8-race card there, 547, $40,000 in the fast track insurance pick 6. The big night, Alexandra Park, 3 Group 1s. The 9-race program kicks off at 6:15. Of course, $25,000 in the pick 6, $10,000 in the early quaddie, $110,000 Woodland Stud Caduceus Club Classic, the $60,000 Hara D Trotters Sires Stakes, the HR Fisk & Sons Anzac Cup, and the Waste Management Taylor Mile, the latter two both worth $100,000. Alongside that will be Addington Raceway. They've got a couple of key races too. The 10 races there kick off at 5:06. Heat 4 of the Garrard Sires Stakes is the first, and Heat 7 of the Neverley R Series. So good night there to coincide with Alexandra Park's big dance. Invercargill on Saturday, 10 races there. 12:10 will be the start time for that. And then on Sunday, the 11 race program out of Rangiora. First there at 11:40. They've got a $40,000 fast track insurance pick 6 after it was not struck at Methven last Sunday, and the $30,000 Rangiora Classic is amongst the features there, and it's a deep race. Then it'll be back-to-back meetings for the Waikato region at Cambridge on Wednesday evening. So a busy week ahead for your harness racing fan. So let's have a look at the features out of Alexandra Park on Friday night. We start with race number 4, which is the Woodland Stud Caduceus Club Classic, first run in 1986. We've got a dominant favourite here at $1.30 in Princess Tiffany. She's unbeaten in 3 runs to date. 2 of those, of course, came at Alexandra Park in the month of March, winning the Delightful Lady Classic at Group 2 level. And this latest performance at Addington Raceway, when she was too strong for race rival Bubbled Up and a few others too. She's got barrier 3. She should be winning this. She'll be through just about every multi you can possibly think of, and yeah, she looks too strong. Stablemate Kayla Marie's done nothing wrong in 4 starts to date either, but $1.30, plenty will be prepared to take the short odds about her. The Hutters, D Trotters, Sires Stakes at Group 2 level, the precursor of course to the Northern Trotting Derby, and here we have the New Zealand Derby winner. She's won 4 from 5, Luby Lou. Her price is around $2. We'll have a look at that Addington Derby winning performance now. She comes widest on the track here after a beautiful card up. Race rival Winterfell brought her into the race in terrific style. It's currently second favourite at $4.20, but she was simply too strong. Disappointment out of that race, Paramount King. He's backed up for this though, so you'd imagine things are all A-OK there. You got the likes of Stress Factor with a nice barrier draw of 2, and Renesmee, who was outstanding winning last week. In fact, let's go back and have a look at her winning this. This is the Breeders' Crown winner, the winner of 5 from 15. She got wide on the Alexandra Park track at her first start. Not often you can do this and win as well as she did. She beat Galleon's Victory, who's been absolutely flying. So Renesmee in good form, comes up with a handy barrier draw of 5 for Dexter Dunn and Jack Harrington, and should be very competitive there. On to race number 6, the HR Fisk & Son Anzac Cup. It's the 2018 edition, of course, and this race has only had a short lifespan, if you like, but gee, it's been won by some stars thus far. All started with I Can Do's It in 2012, Stent, Shimon, Bay, Habibdi Ivy, amongst other winners. Enhein's the $2.50 favourite, comes up with a beautiful barrier draw. His performance in the Trotting Championship last time behind Speeding Spur, who hasn't got a great barrier draw. Outside second row, $5.50. Here's Speeding Spur. Fortuitous to somewhat, but great to see him back in Group 1 winning form. He's gone back-to-back now and he's won 20 from 39. He beats Enhine, who beat himself. He galloped early, he galloped twice in the run home and he still ran second. So he's without doubt the one to beat Enhine. Bordeaux's there. Bordeaux was very good last week. We've seen Le Monde bounced back last week, and here he is. Le Monde taking out last week's short course video, if you like, over the 1700 metres, but he bolted in here. Le Monde beat the almighty Johnson. And of course Bordeaux was probably on a track that didn't suit Bordeaux, so he would have derived plenty out of that, and that will make him very, very hard to beat this week. So let's have a look at the Taylor Mile. Of course, this will be run again over the 1700 metres, and gee, it's a deep race. The bookmakers haven't done you any favours here. This market will change considerably before they go to the post. 5 under $5 is not really a great spoil for you. AG's White Sox 420, 350 about Let It Ride, who's been racing in Australia, of course. Runner-up in the Chariots of Fire behind Jillaby Kung Fu. Rakapukarola, the Derby winner from last year, has got a good barrier draw in Star Galleria at $2.60. In fact, let's have a look at Star Galleria and Let It Ride at the workouts over the weekend. Star Galleria had the measure of Let It Ride, but Tim and Anthony Buck coming out and saying we'll be leading, no doubt. I'm not so convinced about that because AG's White Sox, Rakapukarola and Star Galleria can leave the machine very, very quickly. And I haven't seen Let It Ride show exceptional gate speed in his time in Australia, so it'll be intriguing what unfolds there early. What will be of huge advantage for More the Better as he follows them out. Will do no work early. He's been banging heads with AG's White Sox. Of course, AG's White Sox took out the Easter Cup, and then More the Better did this to him last week. Took the lead with a lap to go, and he raced away and won very comfortably, home in quicker than 56 seconds, so he's right in the best form. Terrific contest. If I was going to go for one, it might be AG's White Sox. He might just find himself in the perfect spot throughout. Of course, Mosdale Connor won out of that barn from a similar barrier draw 2 or 3 years ago. Rangiora on Sunday. It is the Rangiora Classic, and that field's a deep one with the likes of Tiger Thompson, Mickey G, Better's Heart, who's been absolutely flying, Alta Orlando, the same can be said there. It's a good race, very good race, and it has been. Buster Brady will take his place as well. It's at Group 3 level for $30,000, and it's part of what should be a very good program there for the Rangiora Club, the feature meeting for them. Of course, all of the selections available via the Big Fish, the Whale Watch, of course. Go to tab.co.nz or catch it on TAB trackside throughout the weekend. That's been your box seat in their words. Hope you've taken something out of that. We appreciate those who took the time out to answer our questions. We'll resume with a normal box seat next week, Michael Guerin and myself. In the meantime, enjoy your harness racing week ahead.